Hello and welcome to Romero Threads on YouTube, where it's all about embroidery. In today's video, I'm going to give you 5 rules when embroidering hats. So a big reason why I got into embroidery was to make hats. And hats is a very popular in-demand garment that mostly every company always needs hats. No matter what company, what industry, everybody needs hats. Now, a lot of times embroidering hats can be a little bit intimidating. Okay, a lot of moving pieces, a lot of small details that you gotta have in the back of your mind. That's why I wanna go ahead and talk about my 5 rules when embroidering hats. Rule number 1 is to choose the correct needles. You have different options here, all right? I'm not gonna tell you, hey, you have to go with this needle. I have my needles here, all right? So I actually have my needles grouped. I have FFG. This is for your thinner type garments, all right? So we're talking about polo shirts, towels. We're working with R. So I have my little stash here. Okay, these are your options here, all right? So starting from the smallest, middle, biggest. So we have 7511. This is what you're using the majority of the time, all right, when doing hats, all right? That's just sharp, okay? RG, just telling you it's sharp. 7511, we're kind of like standard needle. Now, once we're dealing with puff, okay, once we're dealing with puff, or you're dealing with something where it's going to be heavy type hats, okay, we're going 8012. And then this is just miscellaneous. If you go metallic type thread, 9014, or if you're going something super thick. Now, let's talk about when you want to start using your thicker type needles. This here, structured, okay? So you know it's structured because you have the buckram here in the back, so you can feel it. Now here, especially if you're working with puff, all right? If you're working with puff, you're putting the puff on top of it, heavy stitching, all right? That's when we go with the 80-12 here, especially if we got a big project and we know we're gonna run through a lot of stitches. This can take that beating. And there's also the titanium version, which even gives you stronger needles and prevents any types of deflection. For the most part, we're here in between these two needles, 7511, 8012. So since we're in the topic of foam, you always want to match the thread color with the foam color. As you can see, I'll link some of the locations that we get our foam. Now, this one here is just an added bonus to the rules, okay? Since we're talking about needles, the foam kind of goes with the needles, okay? But you definitely do not want to go to Walmart, to Joann's, to all these other type of craft DIY type spots to get your foam. What you want to do, you'll save a lot of money too, is just buy them with the big sizes, okay? You want to buy your foam in bulk, okay? You want big pieces. You want to make sure that when a project comes, you're ready to go, okay? You're not scrambling going down to Walmart getting your foam. You have to make sure you're using foam that's specifically made for embroidery. You can go Ganold, all right? Ganold has a good variety, and they have the dense foam. You need an account with Ganold to have that, all right? But if you don't have an account with Ganold, you can always use AllStitch, all right? We're always using AllStitch for all types of just regular type foam. All right, let's go with rule number 2 when embroidering hats. And that is, you have to digitize for hats. Meaning, you cannot just transfer a design that was meant for a polo shirt and just say, hey, I'm gonna transfer that design onto my hat. It's not vice versa. Now, you can design something for a hat and then embroider it on a polo shirt. Okay, but it's not vice versa. Sometimes you can get away with it, but you don't want to risk any types of big projects like that. So make sure if you're dealing with a digitizer, you let them know from the beginning, hey, these are my parameters. Okay, parameter number 1 always has to be, hey, this is for a hat. Okay, that way when they're digitizing, they kind of know where to start, where to end. So we're all familiar with, we always start from the bottom and we move our way out, okay? Especially with the softer type hats, all right? Because they can start crunching in, crumbling, folding within itself. Especially any type of complex fill, that's when it plays a big role. Anytime you're dealing with a complex fill, okay? Sometimes you can get away with just digitizing it normal, but something where you're doing a circle, a rectangle, and you're filling it up with stitches, you have to kind of roll it out. All right, roll it out, because it could easily scrunch up and kind of just make a big mess out of your hat. And you always got to be mindful for this center. Okay, this center is the embroidery machine's worst enemy. Okay, we like to work with flex fit, so here with these hats I don't have much problems with this center part here. Okay, but I know there are certain brands that this part here, this center part, is like a rock. Okay, rule number 3, hooping. Hooping is so important. So I'm gonna actually do a sample with this hat here. This is a mesh hat all the way around. Okay, so let me see. Okay, let's talk about hooping. Hooping is gonna make or break your project, your hooping stations, okay? If hats is going to be your specialty, then of course I would highly recommend, all right, Gen 2. Of course you need 2 in production mode. This is the one I use, AllStitch 4x12. You see the center? You're just basing everything off this center here. So I'm going to give you some pointers on the hooping, okay? Of course you want to be over. I just want to give you a good angle here. All right, so look at this bar here, okay? This little here, this is what does all the work when we hoop our hats, okay? So when you push this down, see that? This hat just goes down, perfectly down. It's putting pressure while I'm adjusting. All right. And if you're dealing with mesh, you definitely want to be extra cautious on any pulling movement. All right, so I said rule number 3 was hooping. All right, making sure your hat was hooped correctly. So as you can see, I have 3 points of contact here. 1, which every hoop has this first one, but the big thing is this side here. All right, you literally have 2 other pieces holding it. So here you could definitely tell we're straight because it's grabbing this side straight. On hooping wise, okay, we got all this under control here. All right, so what you don't want, you want this to be nice and flat, okay? Okay, let's talk about bounce, okay? Also known as flagging. That's when your hat is just bouncing all over the place. It's going to happen no matter what. It's just a matter of how much can you control. That's what the tearaway is kind of controlling, is that flagging, all right? That bounce. So if you see yourself having a lot of bounce, you might want to add an extra piece of tearaway. So the way it looks here, our hat is ready to go, okay? I have no problem here. So let's go ahead, let's take it to the machine and let's get it stitched out. Let's just kind of talk about rule number 4, okay? Rule number 4 deals with the details. A small detail such as their phone number, so small that it doesn't make sense to put it on a hat. Okay, sometimes it's not worth it. Sometimes, yes, it is. Okay, so you have to make that judgment call. Other small details we can talk about are details in logos. Okay, details like a drop shadow. All right, sometimes it's not necessary, or multiple colors. There's some logos that have 8 colors. Sometimes dealing with 8 colors is not necessary, or it's gonna turn into a nightmare. So you wanna make a hat design as simple, but of course, as nice as possible. Avoid, especially details when you're working with puff. All right, so now that we started production here, okay, let's talk about rule number 5. Okay, this is very important, especially, all right, this is the best This is the best example that I'm giving you here during puff. Okay. Rule number 5 is you got to make sure you control your speed. You have to know, depending what project you're doing, what speed your machine has to be at. Something with less details, no foam, you could probably go a little quicker. Okay. Sometimes I'm asked at what speed do I run my machine. That all depends. Okay. I don't want to give you a speed and then you're going to run all your designs at that speed and maybe it's too fast or maybe it's too slow. Okay. I can kind of gauge the speed. So you always want to play with the speed. Every machine is different. Okay. So you want to make sure you know the speed that your machine likes to be at, especially during puff. All right, let's check this out. Click, click. Check the bobbin, right? We always check that right away. Let's get a good look here. All right, so look at this. All right. So I'm telling you, this, I haven't done anything, okay? I haven't even touched it with the heat gun yet. All right, so let's talk about other stuff. All right, other stuff that you want to take into consideration when doing hats, because really, yes, there are those 5 main ones, but of course there's all these little small other ones that if you forget about them, all right, it'll make or break. So I'm telling you that a reason why I got into embroidery is to do hats. Okay, so I take hats very serious. All right, it's something that I'm constantly practicing on. Okay, so you get this kind of like a foam here, big pieces of foam. You can always just pull out from here. Okay, but usually if you have anything sticking out, all right, you always have these little handy stuff here. All right, in our situation, we really don't have too much to worry about. Here, anything that's excessive, you can always just remove it. First, you always remove the big pieces. So you always want to have your good heat gun. You really want to be careful, okay? This is plastic that will easily melt. You want to use your low setting, all right? You always want to add heat both sides. I always like to give it both sides. Be mindful if you're going to use a heat gun on this, okay? Because this can easily melt with no hesitation. So you always want to be mindful, all right? So let's see our final. Look at that. So I like to zoom in so you see, right? So you see the quality. All right. So, okay. So we talked about choosing the correct needle. We talked about digitizing. We talked about hooping. We talked about the details. You don't want small little details that's going to affect the quality of your hat. And we talked about the speed. Be mindful of the speed of your machine depending on what you're doing. And there you go. Those were the 5 rules when embroidering hats. There are many other ones. You definitely want to practice until you got it down, perfected down to a science. So there you go. Thank you for visiting us today, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.